Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on the essential engineering works which TransLink are taking forward over the second half of 2021 in Whiteabbey. My name is John Fullerton from Gravis Planning, and I am facilitating this webinar on behalf of TransLink. Before we begin, I can advise that your camera and microphone functions have been turned off and will remain off for the duration of the webinar. To the right of your screen, you will see a Q&A function, which will allow you to submit questions to the panel throughout the presentation. I would ask that you send your questions to all, as opposed to directing them to one panelist, and I will then allocate questions to the relevant person. We're going to address any questions raised at the end of the presentation, and if necessary, we will get back to you directly via email on anything that we are unable to deal with today. Please note, by submitting a question, you're consenting to it being read out. If you do not want your question to be read out, please just let us know and it will be dealt with confidentially. The webinar is also being recorded, and by joining, you are consenting to that. The full recording of the webinar will be available at www.translink.co.uk/dark-arches. Finally, and before we move on with the main presentation, I wanted to say that in normal circumstances, we would have hosted a public event in the local area where you could call in and speak to us face-to-face. But due to COVID-19 and the current public health restrictions, we are using digital platforms such as this webinar to help us engage with local residents and interested parties. Joining me on the webinar today, I have Oliver Watts, who is a project manager with TransLink, Alan Stewart, who is a program manager with TransLink, and Andy Musgrove from Babcock, who are the contractors taking forward the works. You will hear from each of the panelists during the webinar and Q&A. By way of introduction, I wanted to give some key stats which demonstrate the important role which TransLink carries out every day across Northern Ireland. The TransLink vision is to be your first choice for travel, and in order to achieve this, around 13,000 services are in operation on a daily basis. To keep this level of service operational, this involves maintaining 1,400 buses and trains, which cover around 44 million miles every year. The network includes over 80 bus and rail stations, as well as 8,000 park and ride spaces, which are operating very successfully throughout Northern Ireland. TransLink also looks after 300 miles of railway track and over 1,600 civil structures, such as bridges and level crossings. Clearly, ongoing maintenance of the track and associated infrastructure are vital to maintain high safety standards and operational performance. The Department for Infrastructure are investing in significant projects across Belfast, and this includes the new Belfast Hub project, which is the redevelopment of the Great Victoria Street railway station and surrounding area, a redevelopment of the Yorkgate station to provide a new modern facility, and the glider, which has been operating since 2018, connecting East and West Belfast. Investment in the public transport network, such as the projects I've mentioned, is fundamental to supporting economic growth and leading the recovery from COVID-19. It also helps support the shift away from car use to sustainable transport, tackling climate change and improving air quality in the process. It is within this context that TransLink are taking forward the Dark Arches track renewal project in Whiteabbey, and I'll now pass to Oliver Watts of TransLink, who will provide more detail on that.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much, and good evening to everyone who's sitting and watching this webinar. You're very welcome. My name is Oliver Watts. I'm a project manager for TransLink, and I'm looking after the Dark Arches to Whiteabbey track renewal scheme. And on the first slide that is currently on the screen, we have a plan overview of the Whiteabbey area, looking at the railway line and section. And this shows the extent of the track renewal works that fall under the project. The line that's highlighted in red from point 1 through to point 7 is the approximate extent in terms of linear meterage of our dual track renewal. It's approximately 840 meters of dual track railway, which is going to be renewed. And out width of those areas extending up to Whiteabbey Station and in the southerly direction towards Martin Park, we'll be installing new track drainage along with retaining wall structures and civil engineering ducted routes to facilitate our signalling routes. This scheme catches the key transport line between Dark Arches, Shore Road, and south of Whiteabbey Station for both the users of our Larne and North West lines, and it's a key arterial route, which is the way to Belfast from the Derry, Londonderry, and Larne lines. The map, which, oh, sorry, John, can you just go back quickly to the previous slide? Thank you. What also is shown on this slide, you have numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. These are the existing overlying structures that cross over the railway asset through the site. And it's in a cutting, and the name of the dark arches has arrived in railway parlance because of these bridges which go over the railway line in a cutting. So hence the name, the dark arches. What you also see on the map at item number 3 is the existing overbridge between White House Park and Lockshore Manor, which is going to be demolished as part of this project. And then we have the Northern Regional College. To the right of that, there is a field which is serving as our main primary compound, which we'll discuss further on in the presentation. Thank you, John. In terms of an overview, the proposed works include the full renewal, as I said, of approximately 140 metres of the dual track between White House Park and White Abbey Station. This will include new drainage, new cable routes and retaining wall structures, and signalling upgrades are also taking place. There's a re-signalling scheme which is currently underway, and as part of the overall completion of both schemes, will provide a significantly enhanced asset through this line section. Now, in the text of what this means in terms of stuff, it's about 12,000 tonnes of new ballast is going to be laid, approximately 3,300 metres or 2 miles of new rail, 2,800 new sleepers, and this will create 50 construction jobs. From TransLink's perspective, it's essential for us to maintain our high safety standards and operational performance, particularly through this line section. The last major work or intervention was actually carried out in 2005. So by us undertaking this work, it will remove our regular maintenance, but also go some way in reducing noise and disturbance to the residents in the immediate area. As John's alluded to in his earlier slides, this is vital for the economic and social and environmental well-being of Northern Ireland, and as a consequence of this project, the new rail alignments will improve the quality and ride comfort of the passengers. So the overall passenger experience through this line section will be improved greatly. There's currently a temporary speed restriction in place through this area for 50 miles an hour for half a mile of the track section. So as a consequence of finishing this work, we'll be able to remove the temporary speed restriction and return it back to operational speed. And as John had said previously, this is a significant investment in local infrastructure by the DFI, in the order of £19 million. We have here some recent photographs which are representative of the site conditions actually within the cutting. On the left-hand side, this is a photo taken in between House Park and Lockshore Manor. And what you can see there is the existing Masonry Arch Bridge, which is overbridge 10 on our asset register. This is the bridge which is scheduled for removal. The removal will take place during a weekend closure of the line, 54-hour track closure on the 2nd and 3rd of October of this year. But what's also in the photo where you can see there's lighter grey patches of stone, that is our maintenance teams going in and undertaking maintenance of periodic stone drops of actually supplementing the track balance with additional stone, which then gets tamped, and that assists us in maintaining the track geometry to maintain the ride quality as best as we can. The middle picture shows the grading of the cutting slopes within this track section, and as part of this scheme, we are going to be increasing the rail corridor width through the installation of king post retaining walls, which will provide a continuous position of safety for our contractors and personnel who are out walking the track and maintaining the track asset. As you can see in the middle picture, there's very limited room to provide a position of safety. And then the last picture on the right is one of a number of wet beds or slurry beds which have presented themselves throughout the course of the years within the asset, and these have been remediated to in a reactive manner by our maintenance team. Through the consequence of completing all this work and improving the track drainage, elements such as this will be removed. Thank you, John. Okay. John, is this me? Is this? Yes, it's me here. Okay. So for the construction timeline, we are commencing works at the moment in construction of our site compounds. So from the months of July through to December 2021, ahead of the Christmas blockade, we will be installing our retaining wall structures throughout the track asset, installing our new track drainage along with the new signal ducted routes. This will take us through to the 2nd and 3rd of October, where we have a 54-hour line closure, where there will be day and nighttime working required for the planned demolition of over Bridge 10, along with the continuation of drainage within the track asset itself through the overland structures. Then moving on to the Christmas blockade, which is the core element of the works, there will be a line closure implemented between White Abbey and Yorkgate. We will have our contractors geared up and we'll be undertaking the full track renewal of approximately 840 metres of dual track throughout this time. And then once we complete that into January, then we'll be continuing with our nighttime working required for the follow-up works and commence our clear-up operations to demobilise the site.
Thanks, Oliver. And at this stage, we'll bring in Andy Musgrove from our contractor Babcock.
Hello, good evening, everybody, and again, welcome and thank you for giving your time. Just to give a sort of an indication of the type of works that it is, we recognise there's always going to be impacts for sort of construction work, particularly on the railway. But just to give you an idea of what that work is, so the advanced civil engineering works, which run from sort of July through to December, it's going to be nighttime working, so from around 2300 to sort of 0530, 7 days a week. As you've seen from the pictures, this railway runs through a cutting with nowhere to work, and obviously we need to put plant machinery on there to install the king post, the drainage, and all the ducting and the associated works that go with that. So we have to do that when the trains aren't running. So it's midweek possessions, 7 nights a week over those times, slightly longer on a Saturday and a Sunday night. But generally it's pretty repetitive. So that, you know, there is attention in terms of mitigation, so construction plant noise attenuation. So where required, we're putting up sound insulation, etc. Appreciate this is in a cutting, so it's fairly contained. Light pollution, again, we're very particular about direction of tower lights. Make sure they're facing into the work rather than out towards sort of properties or buildings. And then again, the site compounds, you know, timing and management of deliveries. We have deliveries going in and out during the day. And again, that's to make sure that we've got the right tools and equipment and materials for the works each night, so that logistics will be sort of worked around. So there will be work going on during the day as well. So consider working with the contractors at all time. We do have a 24-hour call facility if any issues arise, and that is published on the handouts that went out, but also on the website. So if there's any concerns, that will go through to our control centre, and they will be able to speak to site or to the relative people and be able to get back with things. So as mentioned, we have the main Christmas blockade works 25th of September to December, sorry, to January. So that's when the line is closed, effectively no trains running. Temporary timetable with bus substitution services will operate to ensure that the public can still transport themselves around where required for that missing bit of train service. During this period, there'll be continuous 24-hour working. And the same mitigations measures will be applied as above. Just for note, we've just recently completed a similar blockade very successfully at Lagan Junction in central Belfast, and that was last Christmas, where we renewed a very complex junction, the most complex junction on the TransLink network, during a period over the Christmas that is now up and operating at full line speed. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of specific management of noise, so we've undertaken risk assessments. We're currently doing some noise monitoring for what the sort of baselines are, but all equipment is fitted with engine covers, and it's only operated with those covers closed, so no lifting up and opening up, no rattling, etc. where possible. All equipment is fitted with exhaust silencers. Some of the generators we use will be hydrogen fueled, which are much quieter than diesel. We only use the diesel equipment where you can't get alternatives. So it's all worked within the operated levels. We don't allow staff to just rev stuff up unnecessarily, have lorries or vans sitting there ticking over just to keep a heater going. We've got facilities for the guys for that sort of thing, so there's no need for that. So static machines will be sited as far away from any sort of building as possible, and if there are inhabited buildings near that's where we've got some noise barriers, etc., or acoustic screening that will go up around, and you'll probably see that go up as those compounds are established. So unattended plant outside normal work will have acoustic enclosures as standard, and again, if it's unattended, it's switched off, it's locked up, and it's made safe that way. So quiet nighttime working ethic is employed by all our staff, but also all the local supply chain guys that come and work with and for us. So, you know, everybody's used to, these guys do this day in, day out, so they're well used to it, and we do monitor that very closely. We undertake a series of toolbox talks, and that's to make sure that we keep the staff updated about either noise, environmental issues or responsibilities, and any changes that might happen. So no plant other than railway locomotives we left running for any more than 30 minutes if they're not working. So I appreciate that the plant tends to work quite a lot, and it's unlikely that they'll be sitting around for 30 minutes not working. But if they aren't required to work, then they'll be switched off. Idling railway locomotives, they'll be kept on site as far away from residents as possible. We don't anticipate any engineering locomotives on this site during the first phases of the work. If there are going to be locomotives, then it's most likely to be around on that Christmas blockade when the line is shut. Always we will use the quietest methods when cutting metal at night, and wherever possible, all fabrication is done that can be done off of site. So moving parts of working platforms and other equipment will be lubricated to control noise, proactive traffic management, vehicle parking areas, etc. Next slide, please. So here it shows where our two main compounds for the works are. And these have been secured, and we're establishing compounds at that area now. So stripping back some soil, bunding up where required, and making it fit for purpose, so that we can take deliveries with an unhindered manner and manage them in the right way. So the two compounds are one at the NRC, or Northern Regional College, and this is the main compound. The second compound is land adjacent to the railway, just off a shore road between White House Park and Lost Shore Manor. This is for the storage of the plant, the equipment, but also the site offices will be at the main compound. We also have all our materials that are required to be removed from the existing railway, and the new materials to go back using both of those compounds. Access to those sites are via the roads at Shore Road and at Station Road. So at the NRC compound, say, as I said, it's the main site compound. So there'll be plants and equipment stored there, the temporary offices, but there's a lot of material and also some spoil handling and new material in. So again, we've taken a great deal of effort to plan this in a way that makes it as friendly as it possibly can be for a construction site, and you can see that from the layout there. So there will be some acoustic barriers placed around that. There is going to be a crane for lifting material in and out, and you'll see that on the map. That's just inside the car park, just in off the railway boundary, and then that will allow us to deliver materials much quieter in actual fact than having machines running up and down the ramp with materials other than just to access themselves. And as we spoke about earlier, the lighting required for this, I mean, you'll appreciate, we've got to make the site fit for the guys to work in a safe manner. However, you know, we're very cautious about which way the lights are placed and where they are. Safe to say that, you know, both ourselves as the main contractor and Babcock and all our supply chain, there'll be a number of audits taken out. There'll be site checks by people. We'll do that jointly and independently just to make sure all these things are staying as they should do and as planned. Next slide, please. So over to the Shore Road compound, and again, it's the secondary compound, as I said earlier. There'll be plant and equipment stored there. There'll be some smaller offices, welfare, that type of thing, but mainly material storage and processing. So again, the layout's been thought about in how can we make this one fit for purpose to work, but also so as not to impact locally. So dedicated parking area, lighting towers again, put them in the right place, and there is a significant of trees and vegetation which will help provide that buffer to any sort of noise. Okay.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Andy. And before I move on to talk a bit about the community consultation side of things, I just want to remind everyone we've had a few questions come in, which is great to see. So if you have any questions, now's the time to submit them using the Q&A function, and we'll get to that very shortly. So before moving on to address some of those questions, I want to outline some of the community engagement that we've carried out so far. It's outlined there in the bullet points, but to run through that in a bit more detail, we've issued letters and leaflets via post to individual properties in the vicinity of the works, and this has been done on 2 occasions to date in May and June. So you will have received the leaflet with information, for example, on the webinar this evening. Further information will be posted in advance of the main works. So as the works start in earnest in July, we will keep you regularly updated with letters from TransLink and our contractor Babcock, and leaflets as well. We've briefed elected representatives for the area, and we'll also be presenting to Andermatt Newton Abbey Borough Council Operations Committee later in the year as well. We have established a dedicated web page, and that's at www.translink.co.uk/dark arches. And again, we'll regularly update this as the project progresses. We've made use of digital platforms such as social media and this webinar to provide updates on the works, and that's really important at the minute, given the restrictions we're facing around COVID-19 still. We have set up a dedicated contractor control number to deal with any queries or complaints, and this number has been included in all communications to residents. So look, this is a really important part of what we're doing there, and Andy mentioned it earlier from the point of view of Babcock, whereas our contractor, they have that facility there which is staffed 24/7, and any queries or complaints that come in around the works, we can deal with them in a speedy manner. Further to that, as there will be a line closure and bus substitution service in place, we'll have information in all the key train stations and announcements on trains to ensure that our passengers are kept well informed. So I suppose to sum up, we'll continue to make every effort to communicate the planned works locally, and we remain available to talk to anyone who gets in touch. I think at this stage we'll move on to deal with some of the questions that have been raised during the presentation, and we have had several that have come in. I think firstly we've had a question in around the night working. So I think that was something that Oliver dealt with earlier on in the presentation. If we go back to the timeline for the works and the need for night working. So I'm going to bring Oliver in at this stage. Oliver, the question is around, why is night working required to facilitate this infrastructure project? Just want to check you're not on mute there, Oliver.
There you go. So thank you. Yes, great question. What I would say is, as an organisation, TransLink, we are acutely aware of our commitment to provide a fully functioning transport service. In relation to why the works are carried out during the day, to do that means that we have to close the line. We want to keep services operating. We want people to be able to use the services first thing in the morning through to the last thing at night. And we have a very small window between first and last train to undertake our work. It allows that we can get as much work as we can get done during the night, but also ensure that services are ready for the next day. We did investigate the viability of looking for working during the day, but it would require a significant amount of line closures, and in the context of trying to grow our passenger numbers, it's something that we want to maintain, to have an operational service and provide that continuity of service for the passengers. And that's one of the reasons why night shift working is to be adopted, to protect our services during the day and to allow that we can still maintain our service provision as well, John.
Okay. Thanks, Oliver, for that. And moving on, and again, putting Oliver on the spot again, we have had a question in, and it's back to a slide here, slide 4, I think is useful, which asks about the bridge removal. Just to confirm that there is a bridge being removed, and just if you can go over the detail of that again, Oliver, around where that bridge is and the plan. I know that you have dates in mind for the removal of that and for when that work is to happen. So if you could just give a bit more detail on the bridge removal aspect of the project.
No problem, John. Well, looking at the slide, if you can see, there's a reference point number 3, which shows the existing overbridge. It's bridge number 10. Several bridges along this route which have a number designation. So bridge number 10 is scheduled for removal as part of this project, and it is the bridge between White House Park and Lochshore Manor. John, is it possible to move on to a few slides to show the photos, where I had 3 photos on the slide? There we go, that's it. So on the left-hand side, you see the photo on the far left-hand side. There's a bridge here, and this is the actual bridge which is being removed. It's over bridge 10. It's not being used for any purpose, and both ends are closed off. The only means, it's a means of getting access through to the back gardens of our housing development. It doesn't actually serve any route through to any other destination. In the background behind that bridge, there is the new bridge 10 Alpha or 10A, and that actually serves the Lochshore Manor housing development. So it removed the need for this bridge to remain as it is, because it's not being used, and it was part of our scheme to remove it, given that there is another bridge in place to serve the housing development. So that's the bridge which is being removed. I'm hoping that answers the query and it gives a better indication as to where it is within the line section itself.
Okay, thanks for that, Oliver. We have a few questions in just around the need for mitigation and the management of noise. And I know, Andy, you went through that in some detail in the slide that I've gone back to here now. But I think in response to the queries raised, do you want to say a bit just around Babcock's experience as a contractor in these types of projects and your commitment to some of the bullet points that you raised here around quiet nighttime work ethic and things like that?
Yeah, of course, John. So just to give a bit of background to that, Babcock Rail are one of the principal leading contractors in the UK for track renewals, signalling renewals, and associated sort of works to the railway corridor and the running line. We've been doing this for a number of years. I mean, I've been around 41 years, etc. In terms of the region, we started an 8-year framework for both the signalling and the track replacement, along with the associated civils, for Translink's operation. And we're now sort of coming to 3 years in. We've done a number of schemes around the region. And again, it's been a mixture of nighttime working and where absolutely required, daytime possessions of the track to be able to renew that asset. So we're quite experienced in this work. All our guys are well experienced to it. A lot of locals work with us on the supply chain, and again, these guys are out working most nights of the week, either doing maintenance or doing track renewals for us under that guise. So again, you know, we're used to that. The guys know that they need to keep noise to a minimum. Noise is not zero. It can't be. It's construction. However, you know, the way we do it is to make sure that it's as least impact as it possibly can be.
Okay, thank you for that, Andy. We've had a question come in here, and I know, Oliver, you mentioned that the temporary speed restriction which is in place at the moment due to the condition of the track. So we've had a question in which says, what is the intended line speed after the work is completed? So I'll throw that over to Oliver or Alan, whoever wants to come in just to clarify that.
I'm happy to take this one, John. Yeah, good question. The temporary line speed or temporary speed restriction is currently 50 miles an hour. Once we have completed our work, we have the capacity to return back to a 70 mile an hour operating speed, and rail operations will be looking at introducing that into the timetable accordingly.
Okay. Moving on, we mentioned the bus substitution service that'll be in place when we have the line closures, both in October and at Christmas time. So the first part of the question here is around where trains from the northwest will terminate during, and I assume that's during the line closures. So is that going to be Antrim or White Abbey? So if we could have a bit more detail on the line closure and bus substitution service. Is that one for you, Oliver? Again?
Yeah. So can you just repeat the question, John? It's where they're going to terminate during the line closure?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the planning is currently underway for that, and from the current plan is that the northwest services will terminate at White Abbey. And then the second part of the question is that will the work include the use of a GM locomotive? No, the works are not planned for the blockade phase to have the locomotive and ballast hoppers.
Okay. We have a slightly more technical question there and I'll throw this over, and if it's something that we have to get back on separately, then we can, but it's around new AWS magnets installed for the signals between Fort William and White Abbey, and the signal apertures are also going to be upgraded. So it's a signaling question. So does someone want to jump in, whoever's best suited to answering that question, or if it's something that we need to get back on, I'm happy to do that.
I think, John, very much that's a signaling discipline. We can certainly gather some information on that and come back.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying, yes, there is some signaling works going on there as part of another scheme. This work also includes that, where there's a number of signal upgrades and associated furniture such as magnets and cabling, etc. But as you say, Alan, it's one we can maybe come back with a bit more specifics.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's certainly one that we'll take away, and we'll go back individually on that one via email with an answer on that. We've had a question in just around community consultation and the need to sustain that throughout the project. So, look, if I could just reiterate the points that I made around community consultation. TransLink have been very clear from the start of this project that community consultation is very important to them. So the letters and leaflets that have gone out directly to local residents are an important part of that. Tonight's an important part of that, answering questions that attendees have. But we've also done a lot with the local community as well. So we're engaging with the local schools, local churches, elected representatives, community groups, and we're looking at local initiatives that we can support as well, which are linked to this project. So, we're doing an awful lot of work in the local area where we would hope to leave a legacy associated with these works as well. So, TransLink have been very clear that it's an important part of the works, and we'll continue that. So you will continue to hear from us throughout the duration of this project. And I would reiterate again that the Babcock Control Centre number is there for any queries that people have. We will get back to you directly if you leave us a message with our call centre. So one final question then, and it's around again the structure of the night working. So the question is there going to be construction work carried out every night between July to December? So Oliver, I'll maybe bring you in on that, and it's maybe important to distinguish between the track renewal works and the locations that occurs in, and also the fact of the nature of the dark arches and how that maybe lends itself to noise mitigation in and of itself. So I'll pass over to Oliver just to deal with the question around, is there going to be construction work every night between July and December, and maybe give some wider context to that.
Thank you, John. I'd probably also look to bring Andy on this question, but in summary, yes, there is a 7-day working pattern for the works. However, there are phases where it will not be 7-day work due to accommodating other projects interfaces, such as our new Trains 3 testing program. But Andy, maybe I can bring yourself in to give a bit more of a rundown on the
absolutely. Absolutely, Oliver. Yeah, as you say, the plan, the program is quite tight to be able to get this work to facilitate the work at Christmas in the blockade. As you mentioned, that there's the new trains testing that goes on, so no work will be undertaken during those testing programs. And the work, as you say, runs in phases. It starts off with the civils work, which is the cutting back of the embankment, the installation of the King Post wall, and that then is followed with a lag behind it with the drainage and the cabling. Sort of after sort of November, we then start getting ready and prepping for the Christmas blockade. So that work will change from more heavier civils construction work to delivery of materials, specifically rails and making of long welded rail, etc. And then some of the signalling items that then enable the work at Christmas. So there's phases that have got construction plant working full time, and that's predominantly the initial phases starting in July through till sort of end of October, and then it's, as I say, it's more about delivering materials and shall we say less construction work, but still requires machines on and off the track to facilitate those items.
Okay, thanks for that, Andy. And that's all the questions that have been submitted. So unless we get anything coming in here in the next few seconds, and I'll just give anyone the opportunity to submit something quickly if they have missed anything. But no, look, if there's nothing else coming in there, I want to thank all the panelists for your input during the question and answer session. And I think we'll draw the webinar to a close now. But before we do, I want to thank everyone who has taken the time to join us this evening. I hope you have found it an informative session. And to conclude, I would again highlight that our project team is available to deal with any queries you may have if you contact us through our contractor control centre. So thank you very much.